Woohoo! We made it to my YouTube channel. We as in you and I. For me, it's probably way more exciting than for you, because for you, it's just another YouTube video. For me, it's like a beginning. And so forgive me all the weird stuff I might be saying, the weird movements I might be doing. This is probably going to be the only video where you get to see my face, actually, because for the readings, I will just be filming the cards and my hands, probably. So yeah, I wanted to kind of put a disclaimer first, or like disclaimer slash manual for how to receive and how to work with the readings, because it's not about the messages, it's about you. So it's about whatever I say is bringing up within you. So there are kind of a couple of things you can use if you feel like, to really get all out of the readings that I'll be offering. So the lens through which I will be looking, and this is something that I feel like many people in the spiritual bubble aren't actually actively sharing or putting as a disclaimer. Everything that I share is coming through my consciousness. So as soon as, like in my worldview, as soon as we use language, it's processed within our system. So as soon as I use words to convey a message over here, it's like framed by my way of using language. It's framed by the language that we actually do use. Now I'm like not an English native, you might hear that. Still, like, it's now like the English language that kind of constricts us here. So with the language there comes cultural conditioning, and as these readings will go deep, and as the conditioning is also kind of part of the game, I would say. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page here, and yeah, to address that actively. And so about the content, about the messages in the readings, my worldview, or the framework I use for my work as a spiritual counselor, if you will, is called Sacred Self-Gravity, which means that everything in the outer world is kind of in interaction with us. And everything can become a means to bring us back into our center of alignment, our center of self, like the inner self. And so those readings will be invitations to do just that, both in the content of the messages that actually are conveyed, but also in the way you receive those messages. So it's like, what do they bring up within you? And this is where you want to pay attention. So while I'm speaking right now, how are you feeling? Are you is there something you're projecting on me? Are you bored? Are you stoked to get the first reading in? What is it? And what are you actually looking for? Why are you watching this video? So this is the way to work with these readings and all of my content, actually. And it might be that, actually what we are doing here is then something probably different from what you find on YouTube, which maybe more invites you into consuming. Now, here it's not about consuming, but rather in putting in the work. And with work, I mean mindfulness, presence, observation. And so when you are gonna watch the reading or readings, I hope there will be quite a few at some point. You will want to make sure that you're really paying attention to what those cards or the messages that I'm conveying is bringing up in your system. So it might be that there's something that I say which is probably an invitation to pause. And so what you want to observe is your reaction to that. When there is, for example, this invitation to pause, what is your system doing with this information? Is it oh, thank God somebody gives me this impulse? Or is it but I can't, or whatever it is? It's this reaction is a very important piece of information. So you want to pay attention to that first reaction, to what goes on emotionally, what goes on mentally, what goes on probably even in the body while you're listening. And by observing that, you get the info in. So it might be that, the first example I made, that there's this relief. Somebody finally lets me know that I am allowed to pause. So then you could go further with like some self-inquiry. Why do I need like the outer legitimization to pause? Which conditioning, which limiting beliefs is like in this area? Why didn't I pause on my own in the first place? Why did it have to get to that point where I'm like so overwhelmed by everything that I have to do that I actually crave this legitimization? And so on. Yeah, so I hope you get the hang of it. And all of the observations that you're doing, there's an important foundation for all of that. And the foundation is love. I like and dislike at the same time to make this differentiation between self-love and love for the other, because ultimately I feel like it's the same. But anyway, I'm gonna go with self-love for this purpose, so that like self-love is the foundation and the basis on which you wanna put this approach upon. So whenever you observe a limiting belief or some conditioning or some constriction or something you dislike, it might be a lot of like shadows coming up. We like shadows. This is the new energy that I'm inviting in over here, because they bring up what's been like hidden, and probably there's good stuff there. Most certainly there is. And so what I want you to do is not to judge yourself with anything that comes up, but rather be in an attitude as if you were with a dear one, or probably even with a child, so that the part in you that comes forward with, oh shit, I have been doing this and this and this again, and I've been in this loop again, and I've been there so often, why am I still there? And all of that, to cut out the judgment. And it's an exercise. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to like get it all right in the first reading you watch, or in the first way you approach yourself. It's just like, see it as a training, see it as an invitation, and it continues like from this platform onto all within your life, into all areas. What I'm inviting you into is to really approach yourself with this attitude of compassion and love, so that whatever you find, whatever comes to the surface, it's allowed to be there. Because if we like follow this, like some of you might carry this habit, as I do, to be judgmental of everything that surfaces, and then imagine what your system learns from that. It's like, okay, if I let this shadow surface, there's gonna be this harsh voice that says, oh, you're like the worst person on earth. And so what about the other shadows? They're like, no, maybe I don't want to like surface at all because I get judged. So what if we could like encounter this with an attitude of compassion and love? As if like all those parts of yourself that are surfacing are like your little babies, and you get to love them. Might change something, let me tell you. So yeah, and last of all, I wanted to share how I use those readings for myself. Because I've seen people over and over again to kind of find legitimization in cards, to find safety because there were some like future casting readings and stuff like that. And all of this, viewed through the lens of circles of gravity, is actually a compensation for something that is not centered within the self. So for me, those readings are rather for introspection and for bringing all these parts back into the self, so that I don't need any like certainty about the future in order to feel so safe in the now, because I feel this safety within myself, so I know that I will bring it forth wherever I go. No matter what the situation is, I will find a way to deal with it, I will find a way to react to that, and all of that. And also, one probably last point is that these readings and everything that happens throughout them, it's not linear. So it will always there will always be a different layer, a different perspective, in addition to something. And I invite you to really trust this non-linear process. It also helps with taking out the judgment, actually. And yeah, at some point you will realize that connecting with the self in this way is actually giving you inner stability, is actually giving you a new lens through which to observe life. And it might be super healing. This is probably going to be the last puzzle piece for now. I might add to those like introductory videos probably from time to time, because I have this tendency to think of new stuff that like I feel important for everybody to know as well. So yeah, but this is like the 360 for the beginning. So with the deconditioning and everything that might surface throughout those readings, so it's not a reading, like my worldview is not anchored, or like I'm developing a worldview that is more in the sphere of polarity instead of like dualism, which means that there is no strict distinction between good experiences and bad experiences. It's rather about observing, getting the full picture, getting a broader context, and having a framework to be conscious within and to be aware of, so that yeah, we can learn more about ourselves. And I invite you to really see that as a learning process and an ongoing learning process. I sometimes in my seminars I have this example of how children learn to walk, like babies learn to walk, toddlers, and they're lucky because they don't have the active thinking mind at that time, because from 0 to 2 years babies are mainly in this theta brain state and not so much in the beta brain state, and like we are now here probably in beta because we're focusing and all that. So the beta mind is kind of like what lets you know that you're doing bad, and like, oh no, you failed again, and all the inner criticism that's going on perpetually for most of us. So I invite you to take on this attitude that your toddler beginning to learn to walk, and the toddler falls over and stumbles all the time, and it doesn't think like, oh, I should never try again. It definitely doesn't. Otherwise all of us would probably be crawling on all fours, even as grown-ups. So yeah, that's it for now. I wish you many revelations. I wish you also joy and pleasure in working with these readings. And yeah, I'm curious to see where it takes us, because it's like this adventure that we're in on together.